This is America's Mayor live from Manchester, New Hampshire, with Rome, Italy in the background, where, of course, now everyone's sleeping, but earlier, late yesterday, of course, it's tomorrow in Italy now. Late today here, late yesterday there, 8:00 at night. They closed. They covered with a cloth the body of Pope Francis. It was done by Cardinal Farrell, an Irish American, who is in effect, the acting Pope, and that awaits tomorrow's funeral, or in Italy today's funeral. Which will be attended by 60 or 65 heads of state and anybody that can try to get themselves in. I believe it's outdoors, Ted.
Yes.
And not inside the basilica, which is kind of strange. I thought it would be inside the basilica.
Let me look. Let me actually look at that.
But I think the last one was too, if I recall.
Outdoors?
I think even Benedict was. But yeah, take a look to make sure.
If you look behind you here, if you notice our background, which is it's a few hours old, but it is a live stream from the Vatican.
Move a little so they can see it better.
Well, that appears to be the setup maybe for tomorrow.
Yeah,
take a look. I'll zoom in on it. Is that the setup for tomorrow?
Yeah. Doesn't that look like it?
Yeah. So this right here.
Yeah, the altar would be up here.
Right.
The altar will be up here. These are the seats. Yeah. Yeah, that's the.
That does appear to be the setup. So, as you said, Mayor, this is an outdoor funeral.
Is there any way to make that to focus in a little on here a bit? You see the two screens?
Yes. So those. Oh, and then
they can see me pointing.
Yes, they can.
The two screens here and here.
And then look at the even larger screens on the outside more.
There.
And then look at the big screen. Yep.
There.
And so that'll be more for the public,
there.
right?
So these will be the seated people, right?
Right.
I assume the president and first lady and Zelensky and the prime minister of England, et cetera, will be up in here.
Right.
They'll be up in here. The cardinals will be up. The major mass. It almost seems like it's red over here. I wonder if that's where the cardinals will be, right there. Right?
Yes.
But anybody is in here, right?
Right.
You a big person. And I believe there'll be people out here.
Oh yeah, that whole place will be jam packed.
That's what this is for.
See up. Go point up to the front there, Mayor. Again, where the front you'll be. If we went, you'd be somewhere in that area. Then point down at the bottom there. There, Ted be.
Here's where I was for the inauguration, right here.
Yes.
Right about 6
yes.
rows back. Right. Now that's the altar. You can see the top of it there. That's the altar. The choirs and various it could be the archbishops and bishops and cardinals be up here.
Right.
You know, like
will there be
there'll be a choir. This may be set up as a choir, or it could be for the bishop and archbishop. I assume this is for the clergy right here.
Right.
This white part
right
here. I think the white part is for the clergy and the nuns. And I think the black part is for the heads of state, unless they're going to put some of the heads of state up front here. But this is where it will take place. This is a live on tape shot.
Yes, it's a few hours. Yeah.
Today, there's some of the guards moving around. You see them? They look like little ants. And of course, there's the Great Dome. Those are the Bernini columns, the famous Bernini columns. They're on both sides. They enclose this area, and you enter from here. Pope's palaces, the Pope's rooms are back here. The Sistine Chapel is back there. Back over there. Right there. When you see the smoke coming up, it comes up over here.
Right.
And on this side, if they go around the back, on that side is where they're staying. The St. Martha residence. It'll be quite different tomorrow. We'll see if we can get tomorrow when we first come on. We'll show you what it looks like, what everybody filled in. Everybody filled in. And we'll show you a couple of our own personal shots that we may use tomorrow. You know, we took them at a time when we knew. We took them at a time when we knew that, God forbid, the Pope was going to die. But we stayed. I think I have it right. We stayed north. We stayed north of the capital, kind of moving out of Rome, on one of the 7 hills, at a hotel called the Waldorf Astoria. And it has, I would say, one of the most beautiful views of the Vatican. That's the view that you're looking at right now. Can they see that, Ted? Can we put that on for them? That's the view of the Vatican. Now, this is you were looking at the front of the Vatican. You're now looking at the back of the Vatican. You're now looking at the back of the Vatican. There it is. We'll get up high on it there. And most of what is taking place in those rooms that you see there in the back. And then there's the rest of Rome right across. Here, got another shot of it. That was the hotel. Not bad, huh?
Not bad.
There's another shot coming from the other side. This one will show you that.
There it is.
This is a city of 7 hills. See, there's another one.
Oh, wow.
Facing the Vatican. What I'm doing now is I'm running, it's very hard to see, but I'm running along the Tiber, which runs across here. These are all the buildings right around the Vatican. A lot of this is part of Vatican, the smallest sovereign state in the world, Vatican City. And there's a further view of it, so you get to see it. And this is right outside of our hotel. And that is our, very often, and she'll be with us for the conclave. That's our Italian on again, off again correspondent who does her own podcast, and quite a great one. Now, this is the inner parking lot of the Vatican. So when you see the bishops coming out, I'm going to show you where they come out of. And bishops come out of right over there. And they have buses here, and the buses go around. That's the Pope's rooms right up there. And they look out of both sides. That's Eleonora Tomasi. And of course, this is now completely emptied out. And you will see them, I think they'll show shots of them getting in the buses and going basically to the other side of the Vatican. So the Sistine Chapel is on the right of what you're looking at. And now we're looking at the papal apartments. Up there are the papal apartments. That's the hallway leading to the Sistine Chapel. Quite beautiful, isn't it? That's the entrance to it. That is the anteroom of the Sistine Chapel. When the conclave begins, the cardinals will have a mass in a chapel. They'll walk out into this room, and that door you saw there is one of the 2 doors that opens and allows them into the Sistine Chapel. And once they're in the Sistine Chapel, they get locked in. That's the Sistine Chapel. I'm not sure I was allowed to take these pictures, and that is one of the greatest works in human history. People say one of the greatest works in Western civilization. One of the greatest works in human history. That's the killing of St. Peter. Notice it's upside down. He would not allow himself to be crucified as Christ. That's one of the two priests that took us on a guided tour. That's us in. You can see above us the most beautiful artwork in human history, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. And of course, that's one of the famous paintings by Michelangelo. Not everything worked out. That's original wall of the Sistine Chapel. That's in the anteroom outside where they're going to robe the Pope when he's selected. That's the original wall. And that's the entrance to St. Peter's. And of course, that's, again, Michelangelo, the Pietà. And there's St. Peter's. So we get a little tour. As we get ready, we'll probably get back to this next week or maybe even at the time of the funeral. But the funeral is taking place outside of the Sistine Chapel. When we come back, we're going to talk to you about something very unusual. You know, I don't remember a day in which two judges were arrested for very serious obstruction of justice. I mean, remember, they prosecuted all those J6 people for obstructing administrative proceedings. It turned out that those charges had to be dismissed because they didn't obstruct a damn thing. When you hide somebody who is wanted by federal law enforcement, whether you're an ordinary citizen or a judge, it's a crime. And the Democrats are now squeaking, yelling and screaming. They're persecuting. This is not like going after Trump. This isn't like made up charges. This isn't like Russian collusion or fraud when nobody lost money or charges that are barred by the statute of limitations, but because you don't like the guy, you're going to bring him back, or charges based on false testimony, like from Shifty Schiff. Or these judges harbored people who were wanted by the federal government. What possessed them to think they had the right to do that? The ridiculous notion that the Democrats are trying to assert the judges are kings. When they talk about no one's above the law, well, they insert their judges as above the law. You can't criticize them. You can't arrest them. It's worse when they obstruct justice. We'll be right back. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal, 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
These
This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. And we welcome you to America's Mayor Live, and it's coming to you from No, not Vatican, Vatican City. I wish. Although I love New Hampshire, which is where we are now. We came back from New York last night. As you know, we were on live on tape, mostly, if not at all, because we were at a fundraiser for a fine man who is running for city council in New York. Now, you would say, well, this is a very important position. The city council in New York is the last bastion of common sense left in a city in which its brainwashed people have elected some of the worst political people, either from the point of view of communist left wing and insane ideology or crookedness. They have a judicial system that cannot be trusted at all because it's dominated by the slimy politicians who make all the appointments and put up make-believe elections. They have a group of completely off-the-wall, left-wing, IQ deficient morons who do things like vote for illegal aliens to vote, even though the Constitution of the state sets out the qualifications for voting, which says you have to be a citizen. I mean, it's like a slap in the face, a spitting in the face of the state constitution, which they took an oath to uphold. And of course, that's been reversed now. They also, when we talk later about the judges who aided and abetted the hiding of these federal criminals, the city, since de Blasio has laws that effectuate that, for which not only should they be ignored, but the people who carry them out should be arrested. So Frank Morano was, for about a decade, the one of the most successful and one of the very best radio. I started as a young man in his 20s as a radio talk show host, but a marathon radio talk show. He was the midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning, all those hours. He possessed, he took care of, he answered questions about, he found things to talk about. And he was the highest rated in the biggest market in America, New York. And he's a big loss to WABC and the other stations he was syndicated on. He's a young man still because he started young. He's been involved in politics from when he was a baby. In my case, my races where Staten Island was critical to my winning the mayoralty. And now, if you want to look, you'll see there's Frank. You'll see two Italians, right? That's Frank Morano. And that actually goes back about a month or two at the Village Republican Club where I endorsed him. But last night I went to a special fundraiser for him at the Trump International. Actually, right in the spot where President Trump made his announcement in 2015. I was able to get up and say I'm on historic ground here. And I'm showing you him because members of the city council in New York are on television all the time, national television, of course, mostly on Newsmax, One America's News and Fox, or podcasts and videocasts like mine. Although they will occasionally be on the national news because the city council acts so crazy, they're the only 4 or 5 people that will speak up against, like point out, it's against the Constitution. This is not going to last. Or what the heck are they tearing Jefferson's statue down when we have a big monument to Boss Tweed? We take down Jefferson because he wasn't perfect, but made some of the greatest contributions to human liberty of any human being that's ever lived. And we leave up a thoroughgoing criminal who set New York on 170 years of corruption, which basically was only interrupted the few times a Republican was elected. So how phony is that, taking down the Jefferson statue? So the members of the city council, were quite articulate in pointing these out, and all of the other crazy things we do, encouraging people to be drug addicts, encouraging people to commit crimes, having anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 major criminals on the street at any one time that would be in jail easily if I were mayor or Bloomberg. I mean, New York, half of the laws they pass violate the law. And, Adams now has become a very strong critic of that. But he always was against it. Sometimes Adams' problem was not that he didn't have the right ideas. He didn't have the backbone. We cave into them. Now he's completely lost them. And he's actually in a position to be quite independent and doing a good job at this point. And he's bringing crime down despite them. And they're doing everything. And it's I can tell you it would go down double if they were decent, honest, and sensible. So there's Frank, and he will be an extraordinary, he will represent Staten Island in the city council. And he will, in addition to being a very good vote, he's, because of his background, he's very articulate. So he'll be able to give the counter to the wacky, crazy, insane policies of the New York City Council. If I started to list them all, you'd say this is impossible in America to have people like this. Well, it isn't possible in America to have judges like this either. So the two arrests today, one was in New Mexico, and this is Judge Jose, otherwise known as Joel Cano, not to be confused with the great Yankee and then later other teams, Robinson Cano, and Nancy Cano. And he's a Democratic judge. You knew that, of course. He was arrested today. Do we have some film of that, Ted? He was arrested today by the FBI. And he was
New Mexico or that's what you talking about first.
New Mexico first. Unless you want me to.
No, that's good.
He was harboring. He had living in his house a known ICE, known to ICE and known to him as a member of Trans de Aragua. Now, how would you know he's a member of Trans de Aragua? Well, first of all, like the guy the Democrats are trying to bring back from El Salvador so he could get in a couple more wife beatings before we send him back again, is he had known TDA tattoos all over his body. The Democrats want to say that you're a member of TDA. It sure as hell is very a powerful circumstantial evidence that it is. And I sure as heck don't think most judges would put a person in their house who had TDA tattoos on them. Would you? I tell you what, why doesn't every one of the Democrat senators and congressmen take 3 or 4 people with TDA tattoos on them and put them in their house? And let's see how long they last. Why do you think the guy had TDA tattoos? He also had special clothing and media postings that indicated he was a member. He posed for a picture with the family. He was living with the family. He came in under the great invasion of Biden in 2023. He came across Eagle Pass, which was getting 12,000 a day. They get none now. And Biden used to say, I can't do it because I need legislation. There's been no legislation because Biden was a damn liar, a traitorous, murderous liar, as was the people in his administration, all of whom have gotten away with it. He entered and came in on December 15th and somehow ended up getting to know the judge's wife, and the judge's daughter. The judge gave him an empty room to live in. He was arrested at the judge's home on February 28. He's 23 years old. He was also at various times living, it says, with the judge's daughter, where she apparently gave him 4 firearms. or he gave her 4 firearms, but somehow they're both connected to the firearms. The judge was charged federally with tampering with evidence, and his spouse was charged with conspiracy to do that. His name is Christian Ortega Lopez, and he is officially listed as a member of TDA, the Venezuelan gang. They also conducted a raid on the judge's daughter's home, where he at various points apparently lived, and they found 4 firearms there that belonged to Ortega Lopez. Cano has been on the bench for a while, since 2011. And he resigned a day or so ago with the rumor that this would happen. He was initially hired by the wife as a handyman, lived in the guest house, and occasionally lived in the daughter's house. And it was known to them, the charges say, that he was a wanted criminal. This is a judge we're talking about, or it was a judge. On the same day, a judge in Milwaukee County was arrested. The judge's name, do we have a picture of her?
Yep, bring it up.
Hannah Dugan, a extremely off-the-wall left-wing judge, which means a lawless judge. An FBI special agent submitted the affidavit for her arrest. And what it says is that she allowed an illegal immigrant who was up on charges locally to escape through a jury door that no one else was allowed to use but the jurors and the judge. Secreted him out herself so that he wouldn't be arrested by ICE, consistent with the laws of Wisconsin, or of, I guess, Milwaukee, which is a sanctuary city. This is Eduardo Flores Ruiz, who also was in this country illegally. And according to the court papers, the judge was alerted to the presence of ICE agents in the courthouse. And they were in the hallway. She herself confronted the officers, and according to the FBI agent, told them to speak with the chief judge because they had to have a judicial warrant. That is absolutely untrue. ICE doesn't get judicial warrants because these people are tried before administrative courts because they're not citizens, judge. And they had an administrative warrant, which has the same impact and the same effect. And without alerting them or giving them time to get that warrant that she wrongfully said they needed, she personally escorted Flores Ruiz through a jury door, which evaded the agents who were waiting all the way on the other side of the building. Eventually, the agents rushed outside, found him after a foot chase, and arrested him. And then, as they should, they came back and arrested her. And according to witnesses, numerous witnesses, defense attorneys and defendants who were not in custody never used that door. There'd be no anticipation they'd be going out that door. And she did not inform ICE of that. All she did was say, you got to get a judicial warrant, which they don't have to get. And she commanded them to leave through that door, and she helped them get through the door. Reminds you of the police that opened the doors for the Sharman so that he could go onto the floor of Congress, do whatever he did, which was to destroy nothing and do no harm, make a little speech, say a little prayer, come out, and then get arrested, even though the police acted as escorts at Radio City Music Hall, much as the judge did here. She was his escort out so that he could evade being arrested. Dugan was charged with obstructing or impeding. Remember that, impeding a proceeding? All the right-wing people that were charged with that and was kept in jail for a year, 2 years, until the Supreme Court said it was totally illegal. And the crooked judges of the D.C. Circuit, which may be the worst court in the history of America, had to reverse all those cases because from the very beginning it was clear they were wrong, but they didn't care because this was a situation of one of the worst persecutions in American history. Well, Dugan is charged with obstructing or impeding a proceeding before a department or agency of the United States. That's the Immigration and Naturalization Administrative Court. That's really impeding. You snuck them out. You didn't open the door to let him in. You snuck him out. And the other judge had him living with him. Also, concealing an individual to prevent his discovery and arrest. She was arraigned, and she was, of course, released from custody. Oh, my God. They couldn't hold the judge. Oh, no. And she'll be back on May 15th to set the time for the charges. And she's going to defend herself vigorously. The mayor who has aided and abetted far more of these criminals than the judge came to her defense, of course. The whole Democratic establishment of Wisconsin will come to her defense because the whole Democratic establishment of Wisconsin for some years has been selling the bullshit of sanctuary city, which is a direct violation of federal law. Flores Ruiz, well, what was he being charged with? He is charged with beating another illegal immigrant. It's described as with a closed fist 30 times. And then a woman who tried to intervene beating her. So she was helping him go back, and I guess maybe he got to beat the man 30 times. He only hit the woman a few times. So Judge Dugan, I guess, felt it wasn't fair. He should go back and get to beat up the woman again. Why in the name of God do they help these people get out? The guy sitting in El Salvador beat the living daylights out of his girlfriend over a 2-year period. He ferried around major leaders of MS-13. He's alleged to be involved in all manner of crimes with MS-13. And the Democrat Party is wasting $1 million in fees and everything to try to get him back there so we can do more of it. What do they think he's going to do? And this guy, he came in the United States illegally. He came in through Eagle Pass illegally. He beat the hell out of somebody, beat him 30 times in the head. And then when a woman intervened, he beat her up. So we'll let him out and he'll do it again. Please, somebody call up, come on the show and explain this to me. Explain how they spin this all around to lack of due process. These animals got due process. When I say that Garcia was a member of MS-13, 2 courts found that. All the records of the federal authorities say that. That's sufficient due process for a non-citizen. A non-citizen doesn't get full due process.
Crazy.
A Texas judge also has enjoined the administration now for a certain period of time as they decide the constitutionality, legality, and whatever of the Aliens Act on the deportation of the prisoners they're holding in Texas, but they don't have to let them out. Justices Alito and Thomas provided a dissent and basically think they should be thrown the hell out so they don't kill anybody else, I guess. Well,
wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably missing other cases. I mean, these are going on. Remember, they're making hundreds of arrests every day, and those people who like to obstruct our law, serving the interests of communism, can only keep up with a certain number.
Well, I guess they took us up on our challenge, Mayor. One thing we've always said is, if these people are so fond of all these illegals coming across the border, maybe they should let them into their own homes.
Well, I guess one did. We have only one who's done that.
One.
No,
right.
the other one
let them out the back door.
She just let him out.
just lied to the
Go out the
authorities.
back door. Go out the back
Yeah.
door. So
Aided and abetted.
go out the back door so the feds can't get you.
Yes,
Jesus, that comes from a James Cagney movie.
it does. But yeah, that New Mexico couple, they
Judge,
took that
that's what the
literally.
mafia used to do. Judge Dugan, lawbreaker, disgrace.
It's a disgrace.
Tell me how I'm disbarred and she's not.
That bingo.
I wasn't harboring anybody. I was defending my client.
It's absurd.
I am charged with their perception that I made excessive or untrue statements in the defense of my client. If you every case, because they're contested, the other side would allege the statements made by the lawyer on behalf of the client were unfair and illegal. And by the way, nobody in my case said that. It was outside political agitators who said it. And I was not given anything close to a fair trial in the District of Columbia. Well, the trial that I had was tantamount to what you'd get in the Soviet Union in the old days. How about in one of them, I have effectively a 45-minute gap overall in 4 different tapes, all of which cover the most incriminating portions of the tape. And the judge ignored it completely. And it wasn't a judge, it was a referee appointed paid by the Bar Association and appointed by the court, who if she had ruled for me, would never be a referee again. That's a simple fact. They can deny it all they want, but they're big effing liars. That woman who spent most of her time looking at her cell phone during the trial makes a lot of money being appointed as a referee by Democrat judges to do and the Democrat judges and her wouldn't be there if the Democratic leader in their case of Brooklyn didn't appoint them. Can you imagine if she ruled for me? She may have to go to work. You know, I just know too much about it for them to put it over on me. She asked me at one point, you don't act like you have respect for this court. I said, well, no, actually, the court's one thing. I don't have respect for you, but I know who you are. You're a slimy appointee of a slimy political piece of shit. That's what you are. In a court that has a history of corruption that is so bad that it's a disgrace to all the lawyers in New York. They don't do anything about it. And it's a disgrace to the useless Association of the Bar of the City of New York, which is a completely useless, left-wing, silly, pompous bunch of self-important, extremely destructive people. So the tariff battle.
Yes, sir.
What's going on with the tariff battle? The president says the tariff, he's going to work out a nice, happy little tariff for China. China says they think one can be worked out, and then the other half of China says it can't be worked out. Even if he cut it in half, it would still be disastrous. The experts go back and forth. The market likes it that he said it because it went up again. And it looks like they're going to get through the bottleneck. So both Ted and I lose because we predicted they'd do one agreement this week. He had Vietnam and I had UK.
Well, we said first. We haven't lost yet.
No, we said this week, though. We said what happened this week. And they would come first. One of them would come first. Well, none were done this week. And it appears as if there are, and it depends again. I mean, Trump has said, I'm going to just exaggerate the numbers to show you the distinction. Trump says there are like about 25 of these that are done. The independent group looking at this, whatever the hell that is, says there are about 12 that are done. And there are about 5 that are absolutely done, except it's going to take weeks to do all the clauses you have to put in that lawyers make a fortune on. That only get used if somebody breaks it and you go try to defend them or accuse them or whatever. And only the lawyers will know it's there, not any event. What they're going to do to short circuit it, which makes a lot of sense. And I did this sometimes on business deals. They're going to do a memorandum of understanding of the key terms. And they're going to sign that next week and they're going to start operating on it. And then if, God forbid, something goes wrong, then they'll go back to the bad tariffs. And who are they going to do that with? According to the leaks now, right? They're going to do that with what I reported yesterday, according now to a different source, India first. India is almost ready for the actual formal agreement. Credit to Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife, who went to visit with Mr. Modi and negotiated some of this. According to this, Japan could be next, then UK, Australia, and EU, all of whom could be legally and very safely done in a much smaller memorandum of understanding. So those tariffs would go into effect. And then, of course, it would be subject to further documents, none of which would affect the financial terms, but would affect the protections, or possibly some of the underlying conditions that affect the price of goods that aren't strictly tariffs. Possibly. I'm not sure that's right. Because those really would be substantive terms. The way this is presented, or the way I understand it, is when I mention those countries, the agreement's done on the terms that allow it to go forward, and you can understand them enough to go operate on it. What isn't done is I don't want to demean it as boilerplate, but all the things that have to be there for a treaty. And even some of those probably they nitpick on. And this is if this is what they're going to do, this is very, very sensible. They'll do a nice 4 or 5 page memorandum of understanding. They'll start the tariffs based on that thing that they agree, which may be 0-0. And then if something goes wrong, when all the lawyers who are making the millions are sitting there, fighting over whether it's an and or an or, and they really break up over, America wants an and the UK wants an or, then you go back to the tariffs. I think that's a good solution. I also think that'll break through this unfair thing of saying, well, he's not getting the tariffs done. Last time it took 2 years to do this. Nobody ever does it in less than 2 years. Right. He's actually created.
Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine. And we're going to have a country that you can be proud of, not a laughing stock all over the world for many years, and.
So you just got a few minutes. Got that clip of the president speaking.
Yeah, I think that I think now I'll just move my prediction to next week, and I think they'll get done. And I guess we have to go with the leaks that say India and Japan are teed up. Meanwhile, the question is, are they going to reach agreement with China? As I said, Trump is very, very optimistic about that. No reason not to be optimistic about it. It certainly had an effect on the market the other day. Boom. I don't know what happens if it doesn't go through. I think it'll be a lot better if it doesn't go through and a group of these others have, because the impact then of it on our economy, a trade war with China will have an impact on our economy, but it will not have as major an impact as a worldwide trade. I mean, we do more trading with the EU, we do with China, we do more trading with Canada and Mexico. I mean, China's a problem for us is we got ourselves locked into certain necessary things from them, like pharmaceuticals and things that are necessary for supercomputers. And we're trying to work our way out of that. Part of the reason why I think India might be first. India wants to get that pharmaceutical business. India is not as far. I traveled to India twice to inspect pharmaceutical factories there to see if they complied with American law because of acquisitions by American companies. And they did, by the way. I can't say that India is ahead of China, but India is in a position to be ahead of China if they got the business. They've got the facilities and they've got the educated. India, although it has tremendous poverty, also has a fabulously educated group of people. I mean, we're trying to steal some of them. So India could easily replace China as our go-to country with very favorable reciprocal tariffs that won't affect the price of drugs then, right? As well as some of the companies now already saying they're coming back to America for a certain amount of their production to save money. It'd be nice if Pfizer took a lot of what they sent to Ireland and brought it back to the U.S. That's what he was talking about with the Irish prime minister. I mean, it's remarkable how deeply he's gotten into that. And each one of these straightens out one of the things that has been a major impediment to the growth of jobs in our economy. And if he has to use tariffs as the way to do it, will you stop acting like the tariff is something in and of itself, that it's a moral good or bad? It's like a tax. Governments can't function unless they have some money. So if they tax, there's nothing, they have to tax. You want police, don't you? You want sanitation, don't you? Problem is when they tax too much. Problem is when they steal. I mean, the problem in New York is not even taxing too much, it's stealing too much, which is why it spends too much. I don't know why people just don't simplify that for you. They say, look, Florida has 4 million more people than New York, and New York State has more than twice the budget of Florida. And the services in New York, not any materially better than Florida. In fact, the school systems are starting to reverse now, and Florida is coming up. Why does New York spend twice as much? Let's say they have equal services. Because we're much more corrupt than Florida. New York is much more corrupt than Florida. So that has to be dealt with, including with these tariffs. And he's making real progress here. Making real progress. China is still, I cannot predict for you, nor can anyone else, what will happen with China. Because they are talking out of both sides of their mouths. There's a really good analysis showing how Xi has made provisions for a long tariff battle. The problem, and this is more or less a pro-Chinese publication, the Wall Street Journal. The problem with that is they're much more affected by the tariff than we are because it has about a 3-to-1 impact on them. Because they're much more reliant on exporting and we are reliant on importing, but maybe, quite a bit fraction less than they are in exporting. So if both of them got hurt equally, they'd be hurt 2 to 3 times more than we would. Not nice, because we would be hurt and we don't want to be hurt, but that's the reality of it. So Charlie Gasparino, who's about as good a source as you're going to get on this, says that it's signed agreements, even with the most friendly of trading partners, caught up in the Trump maelstrom, are probably not happening anytime soon. What is more likely is a series of public announcements coming from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and possibly with the president himself, indicating broad outlines of trade pacts that both sides can live with. First out of the box will be India, Japan, UK, Australia, EU involved. That will be the next involved. And it'll be the agreed upon major principles, and they'll go ahead, as I explained. So let's see if that happens, because that will, that means calm down the markets. From now on, we can shorten things. When I want to say calm down the markets, I'll go, or the markets are calmer. When they're in flux, I'll go, and now I'll take a break. So I stop acting like a jackass. Okay. Time, please.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep green, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO, You should know all Arabica beans. No Robusto. All Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax, channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
These
Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live from Manchester, New Hampshire.
We're traveling so much, you got to think twice.
With
Where are
Rome
we
in the
tonight?
background. Yeah, we're heading back. We're heading back to balmy, beautiful
Well, it was balmy and beautiful in New York,
Palm
too.
Beach. Yeah,
And up here.
Warmer up here, though. I thought it was warmer here when we got here.
Right.
But and then we have in the future, we got a trip to Arizona. We've got a trip, maybe if God is good, to Italy, huh? Cover a little of the conclave. And then we have a whole bunch of others we'll announce to you. And maybe we'll do some live shows in some of these places we go. Be nice to do a live show in downtown Rome with my Italian paisans. So
I'm pulling for Cardinal Pizza Bola.
you like the name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the name too. Hey, Pizza Bola. I shouldn't be. He's not the Pope yet, so you can make fun of my name if you want. They do all the time.
We're not making fun of it. I like the name.
Pizza Bola.
I like the name. I'm not in a funny way.
I wonder what name he'll take.
Yeah. Well, I guess
Maybe Ray, like Ray's Pizza.
Well, it's just
Cardinal
because
Ray.
these guys when they were
Ray
kids.
would mean Cardinal King. Really.
Oh.
Well, R-E, R-A-Y, R-E. Ray. The name probably comes from the Latin word for king.
Well, even the Pope, right? They go through confirmation as a child.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how many of them picked their patrons, or is it a patron saint?
Will they use the same name? By now their feelings and their attitude and their knowledge and might be quite different than when they were a child. When I was a child, I thought as a child, but now as a man.
Was Pope Francis? Is that Francis of Assisi?
Yes, it is.
So
he's the first.
And I kind of gotta, that was my. Is it the patron saint? Is it when confirmation you choose is it a
I don't
patron
know. His
saint?
middle name is not Francis.
But when we went through confirmation, do we choose is it called a patron saint?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, a Catholic can very often have four names. So you have my name is Rudolph, named for my grandfather, anglicized from Rodolfo. My second name is William for my uncle, my mother's second oldest brother, who was a New York City police officer, and my godfather, William. My third name is Louis for my maternal grandfather, Rudolph, my paternal grandfather, Louis, and also for St. Louis. And in that case, St. Louis de Montfort, because I wanted to be a Montfort priest. And finally, of course, my last name. So you would say, well, if I were a cardinal and I wanted to be the Pope, why wouldn't I pick Louis as my name? It would be, I don't know if there's ever been a Pope Louis. There've been King Louis.
Mixed reviews.
But
on
I
the
don't know
Kings.
that I would, because the name was picked,
You're a child.
decades ago when I was a child. And the reason I might want to pick a saint that reflected my priorities,
Throughout your life, yes.
Although Louis might be one, because I've had such dedication to St. Louis de Montfort, who began a missionary order, the Montfort Fathers, that are particularly dedicated to the Virgin Mary, which is somewhat debatable now in this dispute between traditionalists and progressives. A lot of the devotions to the Blessed Mother have been de-emphasized as too old-fashioned, like the Latin Mass, which I think is a terrible mistake. And I think it's going to turn out to be a terrible mistake, because what they found is, what they've de-emphasized is the major attraction that now makes Catholicism one of the fastest growing, certainly the fastest growing Christian religion.
So popes traditionally choose a new name.
Because it stands for something. There's a feeling among Catholics to come back because it stands for something. And there's a feeling for people that are unsatisfied with their present religion or seeking a religion, that it's more meaningful and it has more principle, and it isn't just a cave into the woke, liberal, left-wing, Marxist-influenced culture than the other religions. And I think that doesn't happen with Orthodox much, because the Orthodox Church has remained. And also, a lot of the Orthodox Church, please excuse me, don't get insulted with me, I'm just trying to give people a true picture. A lot of the Orthodox Church, a lot of the dedication is not purely religious. A lot of the dedication is the nationality. So, so the argument would be that the Greek Orthodox Church more church or more of a Greek institution? Is the Bulgarian Orthodox Church more of a church or a Bulgarian institution? I don't know enough about it to give you the answer to it. I can just tell you that that's a question. It also, in Hitler's mind, was answered, which is why he applied almost equal persecution to the Orthodox as he did to the Jews, and the Roman Catholics really less down because he felt with the Roman Catholics, he didn't have to drive out the nationality as much because of their allegiance to Rome. They already had a dual, they were Greek and they were Roman Catholic. Whereas if they were Greek Catholics, it turned them into members of the Third Reich. It would be a trick. So if you look at the two cases that I had involving heads of concentration camps, they killed, if not equal numbers of Orthodox, like 20,000 people, 12,000 Jews, and 8,000 everybody else. And everybody else, maybe 1,000, not 1,000. 1,000, not million. Maybe half of that remainder were Orthodox, depending on either the country they were in or people sent to them from Bulgaria or from Greece or from either adjoining countries or countries they had control of. So very interesting. Pete Hegseth. So it's getting President has again expressed his complete and absolute support for Pete. Had a personal conversation with him yesterday. There is not the slightest suggestion that I see that he's going to back off Pete. There is a lot of speculation that he is. but I think it's being created to create it. And I would tell you if I felt differently about it. I would tell you if I thought it was legitimately coming from the inside.
Well,
Unfortunately, you got to be careful because it is very heavy. This is the kind of this is. But I mean, my view of it is, if you sit it out, it'll go away. You got to stand up to these bullies. And, even Mr. President, if you can remove Pete at some point, don't do it now. Don't do it for them. I don't think you should do it at all. I think there is nobody that's going to understand the complete Department. I don't care. You can put Bob McNamara in nowadays, and he's not going to understand the complete Department of Defense. Pete brings something very special to it, and that is the direction it has to go in. Does he have the administrative skills to bring it there? The truth, nobody does. It's a question of picking the right people. And maybe having gotten rid of some of these people, he gets a chance to pick some other people. It's a question of trial and error. But we got to start out with wanting to go in the right direction, which he does. And having executed some of the most important things already to get it down to being a war machine rather than a reflection of left-wing politics. He's made that switch already. I don't know this month, but the first 2 months already, immediately with his presence and most importantly, Trump's, one of our biggest problems is on the road to being solved, which is getting record enrollments. The military academies are back to being overwhelmed. That's a major achievement. The substantive achievements are hard too, and they're going to have to follow, but you can find the people to help you do that. And from what I've seen, there was no jeopardizing of anything critical. You want to fight over whether this was sensitive material or not? Yeah. Was it classified? No. Was anything done illegal? No. Was anything done sloppy? They say yes. Pete says no. I'm going to tell you, having been in government as long as I have, this happens all the time. Like his wife found out about 2 things. Wow. You ever got rid of all of them whose wives found out about 2 things, you'd have no cabinet left. I mean, this is ridiculous. You had Mayorkas who lied 5 times a day, got people killed, and you kept them there. Yeah. What Pete did is, if he did anything, is nothing compared to that.
You have pictures
he brought his wife to sensitive meetings. Oh, my God. And what happened? About the Panama Canal, military options for the Panama Canal. Oh, my God. And look what happened. The Panama Canal is now gone.
How about the latest hit? That's where I think they're running out of juice in their attacks because they just hit Pete, the secretary, they claim for building a makeup studio in the Pentagon, which is factually untrue. He
actually reversed it. They had a plan for a $40,000 remake of all the studios. And he cut it down to something like $5,000.
Right. And it's like a table and a mirror and the basics that you need to go on TV.
By the way, so what? Don't they have to communicate?
Yeah.
And let's be realistic. You want them to get on looking like, I mean, half the time they're working for 35 hours. They come on and they look like, Scrooge when the ghost of Christmas future shows up.
Well, didn't the former Secretary of Defense go AWOL?
I don't know. Show him the lights. Show him the lights. I mean, and theirs are 3 times that.
Setting up a studio. Well,
part of the job of a secretary is to communicate. This is a democracy. So, of course, they should have a studio. And things are expensive, ladies and gentlemen.
Didn't Biden have a whole fake White House
Biden
studio?
had a whole fake Oval Office. That had to cost a couple $100,000 to do.
And didn't former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin go missing, like literally missing on a few occasions?
And they're complaining that Trump, goes back to play golf on weekends, and it cost the government all this money. Well, Biden went back all the time. Now, maybe it didn't cost as much because it's a little closer, but he did it 3 times more. About the same. I didn't see anybody complaining about that.
And I never, whether it was Biden or Obama, any amount of money needed to protect our commander in chief. That's nonsense.
The two of us can personally get on a witness stand and say the guy works his ass off in Mar-a-Lago. He works as hard at Mar-a-Lago
on Sundays.
On Sundays,
he's working.
When he plays golf, he plays. First of all, he plays golf faster than anybody I know.
He's done
about a third of his golf playing is business. I mean,
he's got half the White House there with him.
He played with the guy, the chips guy, who gave us the biggest chip company, 5 of them, and it even let him win. And then he embarrassed him into another one.
Yeah, he doesn't take
half
vacations.
of his golf playing is getting government business done. He puts people there he wants to. Any world leader who plays golf, he'll play golf with him and make the guy a friend. And he's got to have something. The guy doesn't stop. He doesn't stop. Right. Tonight, he's going to be in Italy. I wouldn't drop dead if he called me. I'm not going to say he will, and I'm not trying to act important. And there are a lot of other people he called too. But if I get on his mind about something, like if he hears that I have worries about Putin, he'll say, "What's going on, Rudy? Why'd you say that?"
I can't count the number of times that I've.
Yeah, but he'll do it at 2 a.m. Well, now it'll be ridiculous because he won't even know what time it is.
Yeah.
I can remember it when I was his lawyer. I mean, just basically didn't sleep. And when he traveled, or he would call Jay, not just me, or he called Jane, or he called one of my other lawyers.
Sounds like you, Mayor.
And then we'd all have to get on the phone, have a conference call to answer us. I have to wake everybody up, or they have to wake me up. So
absurd.
This is ridiculous. I think they're persecuting Hegseth.
They want to get that.
Because you know why? They instead of going after everybody, for a while they were going after Hegseth and Kennedy and Tulsi.
Don't forget what they've done to Elon.
A couple of I'm talking about the appointments.
Yeah,
and a couple of the critical appointments that Kennedy made. We saw the value of them this week already. And then they realized they were diffusing it too much. You just looked up. So now it's all Pete. Now I'm going to guarantee you, if we cave in on Pete, we will have fed them raw meat, and they'll start going after Kennedy again and everybody else. If we hold our ground on Pete, we're not going to stop them, but they won't have extra fuel. This is not a legitimate game. So you got to play it by the rules of the game. There is a poll out that the Rupert Murdoch people, which means Fox, the Post, it's a Fox News survey. 59% of American voters disapprove of Trump's handling of inflation. 58% are against his tariffs. 56% dislike his economic moves. 53% are not keen on his tax agenda. 54% don't favor his foreign policy action. And 48% are against his stance on immigration. First of all, I do not know if that is at all true. I do not know.
And any polling on the trade talks now, it's still premature because the media obviously is going to paint this picture that he doesn't know what he's doing, yada, yada, yada. Let's see how this shakes out.
So I don't know how much of this is true, how much of this is not true. What I can tell you is that it does have a little bit of contradictory information in it. Like 55% agree with Trump's moves on securing the border. Only 40% disagree. 47% back his immigration policies. 40% like his foreign policy. 38% are in favor of his economic agenda. And 33% support his tariffs. I'm surprised anybody supports his tariffs with the way they've been unfairly criticized. He's down 5 percentage points off his job rating in March, from 49 to 44, and below what Biden, Obama, and Bush had at this point in their presidencies. Biden was at 54%, which is absurd. Obama at 62 and Bush at 63. In 2017, April 2017, he was at 45%, which is essentially where he is now.
I'm going to bring this up. I got a screenshot of it.
So it's a 54-41% approval, disapproval. 53% on administrative policy, 53% on foreign policy, and half on immigration. I can't imagine why it's half on immigration, unless people are really really being sold on it's a good idea to bring the rapists back to get a couple more rapes in.
Here are the numbers the mayor's talking about right here on the screen.
That's a little hard to see. I have an easier one. I don't know why I didn't put it in my group.
Well, it's a little bit hard to see, but people should be able to see the screen.
Can they see that?
And make it big. Yep.
So I mean that's overall approve 44%. These are three different polls they're showing. Overall approve 41, 44, 41, and 46. He does the best on Atlas Intel. Overall disapprove 55, which means you're 11 points down, right? 41 of 54, which is a little worse, The Economist, and Atlas, which is a 4-point spread. Approval on the economy, 38% to 56 under Fox, 41-53 under Economist, and 42-56 under Atlas. And this is the one that is impossible to really see how anybody could say this. Immigration approved 47-48 on Fox, so that's even. But immigration approved only 50% against in The Economist, and 46-52 with Atlas Intel. These people must be living in another country. We were being invaded at this point in the Biden administration and getting people killed left and right.
That's right.
So there is a very thoughtful column by Kimberly Strassel, which I would urge the administration to read, even though it is somewhat critical. It basically points out that Trump started off really, really high, and that now he's taken a real beating on the things that we just recited. I'm not sure I completely agree with this. I'm telling you her view, and I think it's worth considering it because she's not a thoroughgoing critic, nor is she a thoroughgoing supporter. But she's basically, right of center, and somebody who could be a bellwether for who we need to support us. She says, it's been a little bit of a tough situation on the economy, particularly because the tariffs are so heavily opposed, although they really haven't had an impact yet. And if anything, you could find, we could argue this forever, but I think I can find more pluses so far in the tariffs than minuses. And I can see an end result, which is the most likely, that'll be fabulous. But okay, those are being painted that way. Prices have not gone down as much as we thought they would, but these things haven't taken effect yet. And I will urge you to remember that even Trump's magnificent effect on the economy last time took about almost a whole year. It took Reagan 2 years. It took me 2 years. You can't expect it right away. Now, maybe politically one could criticize and say that that expectation wasn't laid out enough, largely because Trump does so many things at once. And he gets it done really fast. But if he turns the economy around in a year, that'll be fast. Not many people have done it in a year. Reagan didn't. I didn't. But she does make this point. She says Trump's first-term success that has remained largely comes down to his Reagan agenda. And it's those policies that made him a very, very successful one-term president. Deregulation, tax cuts. I think she's got the right order, by the way. I think the deregulation back then was more important than the tax cuts. And peace through strength. He is absolutely correct when he says Xi and Putin were afraid of him and they wouldn't attack onto him. She says there's been a movement in the other direction on some of these. How about the speculation of a millionaire's tax? Well, he shot it down, but there are people in his administration who believe that. And it's hard to see how they would really be, people who understood the necessities of how you stimulate a capitalist economy. If there's one thing that we would think all Republicans would agree on is we've had three major tax cuts in my lifetime. First one under a Democrat, major economic boom. Second under the greatest Republican president since Lincoln. Another great economic boom that lasted for a decade. And under Trump, a massive boom, which would have lasted if we didn't have the pandemic and Biden. But we did it. Deregulation, low taxes, no millionaire tax. And that's why the tax cuts being continued are so important. Now, this time the tax cuts will not have the boom effect that they had last time because they're in effect. It's almost the opposite you have to worry about. If the tax cuts don't happen, it becomes one of the biggest tax increases in American history. And wow, that will kill us. If we avoid it, we will get benefit from it. It won't be the same as before, but it will stabilize things. The markets will really calm down once those tax cuts are effective for the next 10 years. Now you can plan for the next 10 years. And if anything, he's doing more about deregulation now. And deregulation will still have the same impact. It's already having the same impact that it had last time. And as I said last time, I think it did more. I think it may do more this time. I think there's another factor now that's going to come in and create a boom in our economy. That's investment in the United States. We didn't have a competition to invest in the United States, even under Trump last time. We certainly didn't under Biden. We had de-investment. So these investments are record shattering. Part the tariff, part him, part betting on him. These are business people all over the world. Who are they going to bet on? Xi Jinping or Donald Trump? For stimulating and growing an economy, you're going to agree on a broken down homicidal communist or a guy who's already shown he can take his country to economic heights? Well, you know who they're going to count on. Why are they pumping all this money here? Why did Vietnam run over here and say 0 tariffs and we'll give you a lot of money? But she's saying also that there are influences in his administration pulling very heavily in dangerous directions, like to the uber populism and neo-isolationism, which is the uber populism is what causes the thing like the millionaire taxes. And the neo-isolation is the thing that begins to erode peace through strength. If you do the deal that half of his aides seem to support for Ukraine that's being leaked, you eviscerate peace through strength. Peace through strength is not based on my saying it. It's based on their believing it. How did it erode under Obama? Red line, Assad, if you use chemical weapons, he used chemical weapons. Well, next time. But we'd rather negotiate. You got things like that going on with Russia, looking like Russia is going to get by far the better of the deal. And you got that going. You seem to have now a reluctance, and certain people in the administration that would prefer, peace to taking out the Ayatollah. I don't see how you can make the case for how this will ever be a peaceful world so long as there is a major Islamic force in it with ambitions to be an Islamic empire that is dedicated to supporting terrorism and undermining our best ally, and then also dedicated in its own strange, weird way to the death of this country. And I don't know how you don't avenge the death of so many Americans. Soleimani accomplished some of it, but the guy who really did it was the Ayatollah. And we're going to keep him there. And we're going to expect to make peace. We're going to expect that Saudi Arabia is going to make peace with Israel when all the Ayatollah has to do is stimulate the street of Saudi Arabia against the royal family. That can be a tough go, even without Iran stirring the pot. So let me read you the end of Kimberly's column. Mr. Trump might use a 100-day reset as a chance to look at his own team. He's already shown some inclination in that direction, she says, to decide who's there for him and who's there out of personal or ideological ambitions of their own. Mr. Trump has a feel for politics, and his effort this week to tamp down the tariff threats and end the Powell speculation suggests he too wants to get back to a winning message. That shouldn't be hard, as he has a great guide to what works both in policy and in politics, the free market agenda of his first term. He mostly has cabinet heads who share the free market approach and are dedicated to getting it done. This reset is more a question of putting those policies front and center, brushing back those advisors needling him to go a different way, and use the 100-day mark to double down on Trump 1.0 and never look back. So she's basically saying a Reagan-esque agenda, both economically, low taxes, free market, which I think will be improved by fair market. And they're not inconsistent. And most importantly, peace through strength, which can't just be said. It's just building up your budget. It's showing people that you will act when you have to, and a loss to Putin, which is what's on the table, is going to eviscerate that tremendously. On the other hand, it's hard to believe those numbers. It isn't hard to believe that there's a little bit of a slowdown taking place and some real questioning going on because of at least my knowledge of the base with regard to final discuss now and enough temporizing on the reign of terror. Or even though there's not strong support for lots of money for Ukraine, there's not strong support for Putin coming out of this ahead. So I can see those as problems, but I don't think the numbers are quite reflect where we are. When you look at it, the Democrat, and then you got to be compared to somebody. And the Democratic Party is going through a particularly horrible period. You've got AOC looking like she'll be a candidate for president next time, which I got to tell you that passes over a lot of people. Their embrace of trying to bring criminals back here is purely insane, which is why, I think somehow the media creating this issue, at least according to these polls, seems to be having an effect. It shouldn't. That shouldn't be having an effect. The confusion on Russia and Ukraine, the confusion on the Middle East could have an effect like that. The confusion on immigration is an 80-20 issue. I don't know how it converts into people being 50-50 or maybe even less than 50-50 on his immigration policies. It sure as heck didn't affect the minority leader, Jason Pizzo of Florida, the minority leader in Florida, who just quit the Democratic Party. You know, half of them want to quit when they see people like the idiot senator from Maryland going off twice to El Salvador to bring somebody back who didn't get enough times to beat up women. You're going to come back and maybe before we send him back, I can beat up another 5 or 6 women. Thank you, Senator. That's really great. But Mr. Pizzo, you know, quit the Democrat Party. He became an independent. Now, that could be, people think he has an ambition running for governor as a third-party candidate. But I think it's a reflection of the fact that you're going to have no chance as a Democratic candidate. And also a reflection that a guy of his seniority, there isn't a place for him in the Republican Party. I mean, I'm just speculating. Maybe there is. But more complicated than a guy starting out in politics saying, oh, gee, I don't want to be a Democrat anymore. I'm going to be a Republican. You got a lot of that going on. A lot of that. And he's been in the state Senate since 2018, so he's been around a while. I don't know how many of you follow the Karen Reed case, but you do, right, Ted? I didn't really pay much attention to it the first time around. Then I watched a documentary on it, and it really is. I'm just going to tell you flat out, and then I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it tonight, but I will next week. And then as it goes along, when you view the documentary, and then you do a little bit of independent research on the evidence, you go back and forth. I hate to be on this jury. I mean, there are times in which you think she's guilty, and there are times in which you think she's absolutely not guilty. And then there are times in which you utilized a reasonable doubt test and say, well, she may be guilty, but they haven't proved to beyond a reasonable doubt. You come to all three based on the evidence that's there, which really makes the point that there isn't a solid piece or body of evidence that nails her. You know, I'll give you the Biden case. You know what nails the Biden case? Hunter explaining it to you in his own words. For 30 years, I gave half of my income to my father. Now, there was a lot more evidence, but that nails it as a bribe. I'm not going to go through all the reasons why, but it nails it. You get it right out of his mouth. The only defense is he was lying about that, except every other piece of evidence suggests that's what happened. Plus, why would he lie about it? It's not like a confession that was beaten out of him. He said it voluntarily. You don't have that in the Karen Reed case. This is a question of whether she killed him by running into him, either deliberately because it appeared as if from some emails that they were quarreling or possibly breaking up. And she might have done it deliberately, or she might have done it accidentally. However, there's a lot of evidence missing there, like nobody heard it. The place where it happened was just right outside of a window where there are a number of people in a party that he just came out of. His body was there, theoretically was there when these people all left on early New Year's, I think it was New Year's Eve, on early New Year's Day. His body was in the snow, off to the right as they all left in their cars. There were certain markings on her car that suggested she hit something or someone, not completely definitive. But there also was the possibility that those were put there by the people in the house several of whom were law enforcement people, major law enforcement people, and one of whom was a ATF official. And there was some disputes of historical nature between some of them and him, and almost no investigation of them. Only one of them was called as a witness, and the testimony, her testimony went both ways. During the first day or two of the trial, one of the key state witnesses, Kerry Roberts, who was a close friend of the victim, John O'Keefe, who was with Reed and Jennifer McCabe, another protagonist in this situation. The morning they found O'Keefe's body, who was a Boston police officer, admitted during a cross-examination, defense cross-examination, that she did not hear Reed ask McCabe to initiate a web search for hypothermia. Supposedly, she had testified at the first case, or she did testify at the first case, that Reed, who was alleged to have killed O'Keefe by hitting him and leaving him in the snow, had initiated a web search, how long to die in cold. Now, that's pretty incriminating, right? Although it only led to a hung jury in the first trial. She has now admitted she lied about that, which raises the question, why? Why is she trying to nail Karen Reed? And she would have been one of the people who was trying to nail Karen Reed because the murder was actually done by the people at the party that she was part of. So it's only one little piece of evidence to give you how interesting and how close this case is. Reed is claiming she is being framed by Massachusetts police for the death of her boyfriend, which is now 3 years old. Alan Jackson is the lawyer who got her to break down and admit a lie. Congratulations, Alan Jackson. I mean, that's a hell of a thing on cross-examination to get a witness to do. Jackson said, you painted a very, very detailed picture in front of the grand jury, didn't you? Jackson asked as he pointed to a transcript of her testimony. Yeah, she said. Yes, sir, would have been a better answer, by the way. Not well prepared by the prosecution. Sounds like a wise ass when you say, yeah. I would love that as a cross-examiner. Except, and if I were the prosecutor, man, she'd hear it from me after the. She should have heard it from me beforehand, and I would kick myself in the shin, which is what Judge McMahon taught me to do if I made a mistake at trial, which is why at most trials I walked around crippled. And she says, and Jackson says, her answer is, yeah, that's what I testified to. Except it's not true, is it? Here's the way she answers. She should have said, it's not true. Here's the way she answers it. I did not hear her ask that. Well, now, this is an absolute portrait of a deceptive human being who can't even own up to when they lie or make a mistake even. I did not hear her ask that, which means by saying that you did, you lied under oath, which is what I would have said to her. Oh, let me see if I can get that straight. You say you didn't hear her ask that, yet you testified under oath. Swear to God, you're telling the truth, that she said it. So wouldn't it have been a little more direct and honest to say you lied about it? Also, ma'am, do you just lie? Or was there a special reason you lied on this? Oh, don't bother to answer that.
Well, Mayor, I admittedly, I need to catch up on that case, and so we'll have more next week, hopefully, and I'll be able to participate more.
This is expected to last 6 to 8 weeks. It took 2 weeks to seat a jury of 18, evenly split between men and women. Her first trial had 74 witnesses, and it ended in a hung jury in July. And of course, she faces a maximum of life imprisonment if she's convicted of second-degree murder. Now, on the other side, the prosecution introduced some tags that go back to, I mean, quite some time ago, if you think about it, right? I mean, quite some time ago. Huh.
That's right.
Well, these tags say, this is a text in which she sends to her lover, the man she allegedly killed or somebody else killed. You've really hurt me this time. To which he says, I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their life do things for them, and I'm forced to always be the bad guy. He's talking about his children here, I think. Then she sends him one, tell me if you're interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. He responds, nope, things haven't been great between us for a while. You ever consider that? So Reed is accused of drunkenly backing into O'Keefe with her SUV after she dropped him off at a house party. Her lawyers claim that he was killed by one of the people in the house party in some kind of a fight or whatever happened. And because there was always a lot of animosity to her, they framed her for it. Wow. And I'm going to tell you, having gone through the documentary, and we'll go through this, you're going to have a hard time deciding.
I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to catch up on this.
Like those messages, which the messages don't prove that she killed him. I mean, people fight all the time. How many people that are lovers say, "I'm going to kill you"?
Right.
If they all did, wow.
Right.
We'd have even more than Dinkins' 2,000 murders a year. But like some of the people today, the defense lawyer types, they say, well, they don't mean anything. Well, of course they mean something. You build a criminal case of motive and intent with building blocks. There's no one piece of evidence. That's why the Biden case was so clear, because you had that one big piece of evidence. I gave 50 of them to my father for 35 years. You didn't have to put together, well, he sent them this amount of money. He sent this amount of money, this amount of money, this amount of money, might come back something else. Then it all adds up and you have to put a big chart up. You got one piece of evidence. Then you can put the chart up to really drive that piece of evidence home. Here you don't have that. Here you have her having a fight with him months before, fights that all couples have. Not particularly violent threats, no violent threats really. And it's just unhappiness with each other. But as far as I can tell, not I'm going to kill you or I'm going to get rid of you or I hate you. It almost civil, important disputes about the relationship. Now, does it begin all by itself? If they have nothing else, it'll mean nothing. If they can have a building block of 4 or 5 of those things, and they got a couple that move in the direction of violence, then you're starting to fill in a real motive. So let's see what happens. New York State, which has become, and I know maybe it's the death of the Pope that makes me focus on this. I mean, they might as well just make murder completely legal. You can kill 7, 8, and 9-month-old babies in the womb. They now want to have an assisted suicide law. So you can help people commit suicide or get a little desperate, like in Canada, where they seem to disproportionately use it against the disabled and the marginalized. The Post points out today, Alan Nichols, a man with mental illness, listed hearing loss as the reason for his own euthanasia. Hearing loss. The government even tried to sell veteran Christine Gauthier on suicide simply because she fought to have the Veterans Affairs Department install a wheelchair ramp at her house. She preferred to kill herself than put the ramp in. Come on. Government's not that cruel? Particularly if you're a Republican? That'd be the only thing they didn't try. Trying to convince all of us Trump people that we really should commit euthanasia. You know what this does? This creates more murders. I know the liberals will question me about this, but they're wrong. They're always wrong. It demeans life.
Right.
Life should be beyond human hands. It should be in the hands of God. And the reasons for taking it have to be very, very strict and very strictly followed. Self-defense. Defense of the nation. And they have to be real, and they have to be labored over. Now, I'm a proponent of the death penalty, but very, very sparingly, so that when it's used, it has real effect. I think, for example, Ted and I were talking about Mangione, the guy who killed the insurance executive, and it's being listed as a terrorism case because he did it for a political reason. Now, I think Mangione is a very dangerous situation. Not the case itself, obviously, is horrible. The loss of life is terrible. But I think it's a terrible situation in that he's becoming a folk hero. I almost don't understand it. But I do think it not only shows the frivolity of our era, it shows the inhumanity of our era. Inhumanity also meaning the disregard for human life and the shock at any murder. Even having dealt with people who altogether must have committed 700 or 800 murders, dealing with them either as witnesses or defendants, right?
Right.
I'm still shocked by murder. When January 6th took place, and I immediately saw the tape of what happened there, and you'll see, I have it with me right here, Ashley Babbitt, right there. I immediately said, whatever is political about everything else, surely the prosecutor will treat the first-degree murder case as a very serious case. And I got Dr. Maria, and together we put together a body of evidence in 3 or 4 days because I was the first person to get the tape that certainly raised the absolute necessity for a very serious first-degree murder investigation. And then I looked at the grand jury testimony as a complete whitewash and a fix. We have a society that no longer respects in a proper way human life. It happens because of all the abortions that we do. It happens because of all the murder that we tolerate, and the murder like Cuomo letting 43 cop killers free who were supposed to get the death penalty. And instead of getting the death penalty, were given life in prison and they never be out. And that's worse, they used to say. Somebody would rather be dead than be in prison all their life. Yeah, well, then explain to me why they spend millions on trying to stay alive. Because they know that perverted creeps like Cuomo will let them out. 43 of them since 2018, walking the streets of New York who kill police officers. And we have respect for human life. So you talk about taking human life. It should be beyond the power of human beings to take human life, only God. And then the exceptions should be very narrow and very strictly construed. And they should include death penalty, because there's a time when the death penalty reaffirms the importance of human life because the crime is so horrific. But it better be horrific, and it better be 100% provable, not just beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's why I would say with Mangione, we're not talking about a death penalty here. This crime was a horrible, terrible, despicable crime. None of the justifications made for it that he was a insurance guy, bad guy, justify no death penalty. What creates question about the death penalty is, did this guy do an absolutely 100% cold-blooded, premeditated murder, or is he a little effed up? Not enough so you'd let him off, but not enough so that you'd say it's the kind of deliberate crime that you're going to fry him. Now, I'm not sure. You put me on a death penalty jury with him, I'd want to know the evidence more. But I'm saying that is, and I'm not even criticizing the government going for the death penalty. But when that takes place, I'm going to be extremely open-minded about whether it should or should not be a verdict. Whereas the two Nazis that I sent off to the death penalty, who killed allegedly 20 in one case, 1,000 and 12,000 in the other, I did not have a problem with, because you needed the death penalty to reaffirm the importance of human life, that when a horrendous crime like that takes place, the ultimate penalty is available. At least that's Rudy's view. And that's why I think the euthanasia attempt in New York, and I worry about the New York legislature, because when they approve killing babies who are 6, 7, and 8 months and 9 months in the womb, they had a standing ovation and a party. At least they should have felt very bad that they had to do that. At least. You know that the president and Pete Hegseth have banned trans people from the military, as well as paying for trans operations. Because people in the military wanted to have free $400,000 trans operations and get themselves mutilated. Well, some jackass judge halted that, and they have gone. President's gone to the Supreme Court, petitioning the Supreme Court to allow the ban to go into effect while it's being litigated. You know, I've been watching these. I've been watching these interviews and videos and profiles on the different candidates for Pope, and the whole relativism of our age, and I hear a lot of people saying, you know, particularly those arguing for the more traditional viewpoints, they wake up every morning and something happens and they can't even realize they're in the same world that they used to be in. I can't tell you how that's been happening to me so much in the last 5 years. I mean, I think we've gone as crazy as we're going to go. You know, when we first faced, can a guy who puts a skirt on and have a penis walk into a ladies' room? I thought that's about as far as we can go. Who's gonna support that? What liberal would support that? Even if you don't have a kid, why should somebody with a penis go in a ladies' room? And now it turns out to be a controversial subject. You know, there was a period of time where a great governor lost the election because of that position. Kind of flipped now, as common sense is returning, thank God. But there still are, you know, even if it's 20% of the people, that's an awful lot of wackos, huh, Ted?
That's too many, Mayor.
I mean, you want to debate with me on whether taxes up or down help or hurt? I think I'm right. I don't think you're crazy. Or on tariffs. I think I'm right that you guys who are against them treat it like a cult, like every tariff is bad. No, tariffs are good or bad how you use them. They got to be there in order to assure a fair market, because an unfair market is not a free market. So don't tell me you're for free markets if you're allowing manipulation, just like you're not for a free and fair stock market if you allow insider trading. The president, Ted, is going to have, or did have, a meeting. Did we ever find out how it worked out? With Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, who is Jeffrey Goldberg? Jeffrey Goldberg is the guy that inadvertently was allowed on the famous conversation that poor Pete Hegseth is in terrible trouble for. He was accidentally allowed on it. Like the sneak that he is, he remained on it for a week when a patriotic American would have informed the government of the insecurity of this communication. He's got some garbage answer that he wasn't sure he wasn't being set up. And another reason why he should report it if he thought he was being set up. It's ridiculous if he thought he was being set up and he didn't go report it immediately to the FBI. There was a time in which Jay Soloway and I, when we were representing President Trump, thought we were set up. We immediately reported it. And it turned out to be just one of the many disgraceful things done by the Mueller people. So this guy is going to have an interview with him because Atlantic is going to do an article called "The Most Consequential President of the Century." And the president was going to have an interview with him. I thought it was today. Is there any, did the president throw him out?
I think it was for Friday. I think they.
It says here later, this is in this morning's, Friday morning, April 25th newspaper. Later today, I will be meeting with, of all people, Goldberg. Today would have been Thursday. Person responsible for many fictional stories about me, including the made-up hoax on Suckers and Losers and Signalgate. Something he was somewhat more successful with. He's doing a story, the most consequential president of this century, basically whether you like him or not. In the Atlantic, which hasn't written a truthful thing about him since he came down the stairs. So, nope, nothing on that yet.
So that's right. On Thursday, the president said that he would be meeting with Atlantic magazine editor-in-chief along with two colleagues, and that meeting was going to happen Thursday. So we're looking to see a day. He posted Thursday.
Well, obviously nothing.
I'm not sure if it's happened yet.
Nothing extremely important happened, or we know about it.
But I you know what? I'm okay with the president doing this. He's very capable of holding his own with any journalist, let alone
100%.
Right. I think you would agree with that.
I'm not pointing it out whether I agree with it or disagree with it. I'm not sure if I agree with it. I have to analyze it more if I agree with it or disagree with it. But I don't just instinctually disagree with it because he is so good.
Right.
I'm just wondering what happened.
Right. We'll dig into that, Mayor.
Because if the guy goes overboard, the president will throw him out.
Yeah, we'll just tell him.
Did he throw him out on his ass? Is what I want to know.
Well, we do have some breaking news I've been wanting to get to, Mayor. Do you want to wait till the end here?
Well, we are at the end, pretty much, right?
Jeffrey Epstein accuser Virginia Giuffre, I always get her last name wrong, has died by suicide. Giuffre, not Elaine Maxwell.
Giuffre. It's a French name.
Yes,
yeah.
Giuffre, Virginia Giuffre.
Giuffre.
Her family has announced she unfortunately has passed away due to suicide.
Wow.
This breaking within the hour. NBC News reports Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse, has died by suicide, her family said Friday. She died near Gabby, Australia, where she has been living for several years.
There was a recent revelation disputing her testimony about Prince Andrew.
Yeah, that's right. We have to bring somebody on to.
There, that's a picture right there. I've forgotten what it was, and again, I don't have a determination about this one way or the other. I will have to tell you, I do know Prince Andrew. I met him several times. Found him to be extraordinarily interesting, fun, and charming. And he is the one who offered me an honorary Knight Commander of the British Empire, a knightship, honorary, because I'm an American citizen, on behalf of his mother. And then I've several times socialized with him way back then. He even showed me how to put all the stuff on. And then I saw him several times at golf tournaments. He's very interested in golf. This stuff here, I have no personal knowledge of. I'm not. Maybe I should say that louder. I have no personal. Believe me, if I did, given the fact that they went over all of my life for 25 years,
Oh, I would have been.
Even my speeding tickets, you would know about it. Right. Is that Virginia?
This is Virginia.
Oh, there she is as a
car
baby.
Accident.
Well, that's the picture of her as a baby that we're so familiar with.
Right. And that's her more recently. So that breaking within the last hour, her family confirming she has lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. That's a quote from the family.
I think that is whether the situation with the prince is correct, right?
Right. Accuser. Accuser.
No, it hasn't been resolved. So
exactly.
how are we going to say that it's true or not? But right. I do think the fact that she was used by Epstein, I think that's pretty solid. I mean, that's true. Whether it involved.
So
she's an American Australian alleged victim of child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
So that's breaking within the last.
She was born, however, in Sacramento, California. She's 41 years old. She has been married to Robert Jeffrey. She has 3 children. Her parents are Sky Roberts and Lynn Roberts. And she's a citizen of the U.S. and Australia. And she is the main accuser of Prince Andrew. She just left. This is what I remember about her. She left the hospital 2 weeks ago. She left the hospital 2 weeks ago.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre accident of some sort.
This is what she looked like when she had her accident. This may have been. Want to show this? That's when she was in the hospital 2 weeks ago. Give me a second. Which may now, when we look back on it, have been a suicide attempt, right? Look at the poor girl.
Oh yeah, that makes you really wonder. Good point.
Wow. And the full nature. And the full nature of the of what happened then it has not been determined.
Right. Wow. Well.
So we'll have that.
We'll and stay with us all weekend.
And she was in. Yep. She was in Australia at the time.
Yes, she's been for a few years. So we'll stay up with that.
So it happened on Thursday, just weeks after she made headlines for saying she had days to live following a collision with a bus. She lost her life to suicide. This is the announcement of her family. She alleges she was sex trafficked at 16 after she was recruited by Giselle Maxwell, who's serving a 20-year sentence. That's Giselle Maxwell is the darker woman in the photograph. She got recruited from her job as a locker room attendant at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. She's a mom of 3. She's forced to have sex with disgraced Prince Andrew 3 times, she alleges, when she was 17, including on Epstein's Little St. James Island in New Mexico and in Maxwell's London home, where there is a picture of her. There you go, she turned out to be a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse. Terrible. So
we'll follow that and all these other stories. It's a busy news night. And it's only going to get busier with the funeral coming up in just a few
Yeah,
hours.
let's say a prayer for her too, as we conclude for Virginia. Had to be a very, we don't know the full magnitude of what happened, the exact truth of it. There seems to be no doubt that some portion of it is certainly true, that she had been abused. She seemed to be extremely sincere in her battle against sex abuse. And obviously she was extremely troubled. And for that, at a time in which we were coming right after Easter, the death of the Pope, I mean, we should ask God to grant her mercy. I know that technically suicide is a sin, but I wonder if a sin, like a crime, has to have the full mental intent to break the law of God. And the situation she looked to be in, I doubt if she was a sound mind, which would, like a crime, would make it not a sin. By the way, a lot of the criminal law emerges from the moral theology of Roman Catholicism, because when the Magna Carta was signed and the English common law was developed, the religion of England was Roman Catholic, which has the heaviest, most fulsome, and most developed theology and moral theology of any religion, because of all the work that was done by the monks, who had plenty of time to sit there and write about it. So a lot of our laws and the background for a lot of our laws come from both England, from Rome, even earlier, and from the early Christian religion. Crimes are like sins. And you can't commit a crime without intent. You can't commit a sin without intent. If you don't know you're doing it, you're not sinning. So pray for Virginia. And pray for the repose of her soul and for peace for her, finally. And let's pray for what people that we're talking about. They're people, they're human beings. And if that affects President Trump a lot, you can see that. In fact, I am shocked at the fact that he's more affected by it than the leaders of the two countries that are involved. Shame on them. So pray for the people of Ukraine, and pray for the people of Israel, and pray for the people of Iran. And I pray that the cardinals of the Roman Catholic Church make a decision that is truly wise and that enhances God's role in the world, because we need him back badly. I believe it's critical. The loss of God, the attack, the successful driving of God out of the public square, public discussion, has a lot to do with the serious state of morality in our present world, not just America, but our present world. They're some of the worst. And we need them back, for those of us who believe and for the benefit of those of us who don't, because it makes for a much more orderly and a much more beautiful and a much more giving a world, since the principal teaching is to be good to each other. So pray for that. We will be with you over the weekend. We're going to try to cover some of the funeral, live or possibly live on tape, and depending on your situation. So enjoy the weekend. Spend a little time reflecting on the Pope. I think it will be a beautiful ceremony to look at, but spend some time relaxing too. We all need to do that. And Sunday is a day of rest, or Saturday if you're Jewish. So, God bless America.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able